You're listening to Navigating the French on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content and a bonus episode of Navigating the French, please join us on Patreon.
Hello, and welcome to Navigating the French, the podcast where each episode we take a look at a French word and try and see what it tells us about French culture. I'm your host, Emily Monaco. During lockdown, the Countess Marie de Tilly took to TikTok to teach do's and don'ts to the youngest generation of French society. She's here to discuss a word that evokes some of these rules and to explore why its innate rigidity might mean a different word is better suited to talking about politeness and respect. Etiquette. All right, and welcome, Marie, to the podcast. Marie, could you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm an etiquette teacher, and I teach savoir-vivre and savoir-être. I prefer this word to etiquette, but I teach all around the world with Chinese, African, Russian, Brazil, American, and in France also. And I teach also in a marketing school in France, like Sciences Po or Dauphine, and also in school for luxury, and in school for teaching all about the hotel and the cook. I have a lot of I can say pupils or participants or students, and I try to teach how to be at ease in different situations. I think that savoir-vivre is that, to be at ease all in your life in different situations.
I love that. And I love that you're sort of glomming onto this word savoir-vivre. For those who don't speak French, savoir-vivre is a compound word with savoir, to know, and vivre, to live. So it's to know how to live. And I think it's interesting because in English, we've borrowed this word etiquette. We use the word etiquette in English, and we use it as a common way to describe manners or politeness or other traditions of respect. But in France, I get the impression that it has a slightly different connotation. So can you tell me a little bit about what the difference feels like to you between etiquette and savoir-vivre?
Yes, you're totally right. Because etiquette for me, and I think for a lot of people in France, is very rigid. Etiquette could mean protocol. So protocol, you use the protocol for official situations. As you tell, I think that savoir, to know, and vivre, is very important to know how to live in different way. And I think that etiquette is much more, it's quite rigid for me. So I prefer to teach savoir-être, how to be in a different situation, how to be in, when you are a little lost, how to be lost around a lot of people, how to live and how to be in yes, when you are with people that you don't know the manners. And I think that the savoir-être and savoir-vivre is how to respect the difference. Yes, because etiquette for me is much more strict.
And I can imagine that you working with as many international students as you do, it's that balance, right? Between, there are things in etiquette that maybe feel rigid to foreigners, but that to French people, you don't even think about it. You don't even think about vous versus tu. It's just it's a thing that's in your head. But if you're a foreigner and you come, it might seem really rigid and strict, right?
Yes, you tell the example of you, vous au lieu de tu. For me, it's not huge, it's not, and it's not rude also, because you, vous ou tu, could be employed in different situations. And I agree with you when you said for foreigners, it's difficult to know when you use le vous and le tu, but it's not so important on my eyes side. It's not so important. And I think that a lot of foreigners are very, very lost for the vous and the tu. But, as the American employed le tu for everybody, the mode and the way is also in France now to use the tu for a lot of for a lot of person, even if you don't know them. But when you are foreigners, it's not very rude. It's not a mistake.
Yes. And I actually think one thing that's really interesting in French versus English is obviously in English we only have one you and it's you, but we used to have two, which tu, we used to have thou. And thou, when you hear it in Shakespeare, or you hear it in, if you went to Catholic school and you hear it in prayers, thou, which we don't use in English anymore, is the tu. So French has a familiar and a respectful you, and English only has the respectful you. So I like that the French offer an opportunity to have a closer you. In America, we think that we're being friendly with everybody, but actually, linguistically, we're keeping everybody at a distance, and that always kind of makes me laugh. So I know that people ask you this all the time, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just about specific French manners, because I think there are some things that where you can accidentally misstep as a foreigner just because you don't know the norms.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're a foreigner and you come to France, is it ever rude to come to a dinner party and give your hostess wine or flowers? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? How do you feel about that?
How do I feel? I think I think it's not rude, of course, because to offer something is never rude. So I think it's not very, very important. Of course, the rule said in France, but that offer flowers is very, how can I say, difficult for a hostess because you have to introduce person and in the same time to find a vase to put the flowers in it. But it's not rude to offer flowers, of course. Be simple, be simple. We are in 2022, and I think we have to be simple. It's not rude to offer flowers. It's absolutely fine. I will be very happy if someone offers flowers when I gave a dinner. Maybe it's a little more rude to offer wine because the word rude is not the good way. It's the good word, but it's touchy. I think it's very difficult and touchy to offer wine because you have to share it with the guest, and it's very difficult to find the good wine that I would. For example, if I am the hostess, I will prepare wine, and it's very difficult to find the good wines. So I think it's very difficult and a little touchy to offer wine. That's why. But if you want to offer alcohol, offer like a digestif, like a cognac, like a beer, something like that. But don't offer wine.
Okay.
But it's not rude. The word rude is too high, too high.
So it's just about that bringing a gift is kind, but to bear in mind that the hostess will feel like they have to share it out. So get something that's easy to share. Like you said, like a digestif.
You can offer candles. You can offer a book if you know the person. You can offer whatever you want. But macaron, if you are chocolates are very well because chocolate you can offer after the dinner. You can share it with a guest. So I think it's a good thing to offer chocolates.
And if you were to invite people over for dinner and you invited them for 8 p.m., what time do you think that people should actually come?
We call that in France le quart d'heure de retard. So with 15 minutes late is very good. After half an hour, I think half an hour is really, I think, rude. Quart d'heure. 15 minutes is good. 15 minutes is good.
In the United States, when we are teaching table manners to children, we tell them to never put their elbows on the table and to keep their hands in their lap. But I think in France, you're not supposed to put your hands in your lap, right? You're supposed to put your hands on the table. Is that right?
Yes, in France, the manners is and the rule is to put the hands on the table, just with, you have the plate and just side to side, you put the hand, never the elbows. But there's a rule that you can put your elbows on the table if you are a woman married, because with that you can cross your hand just above the plate nicely, and that rule become to the 19th century, because like that you can show your social position. If you have rings, if you have diamonds, people can see your and watch on the diamonds and the rings, so they see the position of your husband.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, because in the 19th century, after the revolution, the bourgeois was the richest man, so the bourgeois wants to show show off, they were the new rich, because the aristocrats has no more money and was poor, and the bourgeois was the rich, and they want to show their richness. So for example, there's a lot of rules that came from the 19th century. Example, there's a lot of things new. For example, the fish silvery, the knife and the fork for for the fish came from the 19th century.
Okay.
They want to have, for example, rich table with a lot of silver, with a lot of crystal, something like that. So, as I said, the silver for the fish, so for the fork and the knife, the knife for the fish is different, is a little is totally different than that a knife,
Yeah, it has a very unique shape. Absolutely.
Yes, it has a shape different shape. So this silvery came from the 19th century, and for a real aristocrat, he doesn't want and he never use a silvery for the for the fish. Never, 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 because he said that it's for the new rich.
Oh, so, okay. So an aristocrat in France, for an aristocrat in France, the bourgeois is like the nouveau riche. So they,
Exactly.
okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Interesting. Are there any other examples that you have from the 19th century of kind of new rules or new norms that kind of rose up at that time?
Yes, for example, I don't know how to say that in English, but the little things that you put just under the knife.
Oh, yes. I don't know what that's called in English either, but like a little rest to put your knife on.
Yes, and it's totally 19th century. You never saw that in the aristocracy. Never. Because for well, it's a pity, for example, we are now in 21 century, and I think really it's a pity, because it's exactly as you said. I don't want to go by plane or by train, because it's not like before, and I think it's totally stupid to stay like that and to stay with this state of mind. So it's interesting to know that, because when you have lunch or dinner with some kind of people, you know the rule. But I think it's interesting to know that, maybe for your culture, but for me it's also a little ridiculous.
Yeah, there is this sort of interesting distinction, between things that we were doing 100, 200 years ago and the modern world.
Yes, things have changed, and you have to live in your century, for me.
I agree. If you're enjoying this episode of Navigating the French, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Storytime in Paris, where each week host Jennifer interviews a different author about his or her book set in Paris or France. Navigating the French will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Navigating the French. A lot of the time people ask me, so I also, in addition to doing podcasts, I do a lot of cheese tastings with Americans, and they come to France, and one of the first things they ask me is it rude to eat my cheese with bread? And I always say to them, I'm nobody's mom, and I'm not the cheese police, so you can do what you want. But I do know that there used to be, preconceived notions about having, spreading your cheese on bread or spreading foie gras on your bread. Do are there sort of rules or norms that you can think of, are you supposed to just put the cheese on the bread? Are you supposed to eat the cheese with a fork and knife? Are you supposed to spread it? Are there rules about this?
No, I understand your question. Of course, spreading is not good for everything. Spreading is not so. It is for me rude, But using a fork with your cheese is also rude, also at my eyes.
Okay.
Yes, you have to just use a piece of bread and to put it on it, to put the cheese on it, but not spreading. And for the foie gras, it's totally different. You have to, how can I say that? You have to eat it not with a knife, but only with a fork, and you put it on the piece of bread.
Okay.
Only with a fork, for the foie gras, only with a fork. It's really rude to use a knife with your foie gras, but just a touch on the bread, not spread it.
Why is it rude to use a knife?
Because using a knife is much more rude. You have to use the fork for a lot of things. The knife is only for cheese and meat, and never for the fish, and never for also all a lot of things, of vegetables, for example. But don't be stupid too, because when you have a potatoes very huge, you have to cut it with your knife. But not using the fork is much more better than using your knife.
And you did remind me when you said that it's you're not supposed to cut your salad, right?
Never, never, never. But there's a reason for that. There's a reason, because before the knife was in steel, and the vinegar was the lame of the knife.
Oh, the vinegar would rust the knife. Okay. Yes, yes.
That's why you don't use your knife for the salad. Never.
That makes sense.
But now that makes sense. That made sense before,
Right.
because now you have knife. Of course, the place when you hold your knife is in silver, and before the lame, I don't know how to say that,
The blade.
was in steel. But nowadays the lame are not in steel. So it was interesting before, but I think now you don't. The rule has stayed. The rule is now you don't use a knife with your salad, and you can see if you have a manner or not. If people use the knife, yes, it's rude. Yes, definitely it's
Okay.
rude. Yes, definitely it's rude.
So it's interesting because there's for that particular rule or etiquette norm, there's almost a scientific base in it, but some of these things have a really historical basis. And specifically, I know that you've done a bit of research into how some historical French women are the source of a lot of our traditions of manners and etiquette and savoir vivre. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about specifically Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was a fascinating woman, and the impact that she had on savoir vivre and etiquette today.
Aliénor d'Aquitaine is absolutely fascinating, as you said, but I don't agree with you with the savoir vivre. Aliénor d'Aquitaine is fascinating because of her state of mind, because she was free. She was the first woman in the Middle Ages to be free and to be rebel also. She was married with the Roi de France.
The King of France, yeah.
She had two daughters with him. But that's interesting, because she was not in love with him. I think he was a little fragile. Yes,
Mm.
fragile. So the life was not so good for her to stay with him. So she asked. The word didn't exist at this time, divorce, and so she argued that she was too relative with him. Do you understand what I mean?
No.
Relatives, so like a cousin, like
Oh, okay. That she was almost like family with him, but not married, not in love.
we call that in France consanguinité.
Oh, I see. It was incest. Incest.
Like brother, like cousin, like relative. So
Yes.
so she argued that she can't stay with him, and she married in the second time with the King of England, and she has four sons, I think. And in these four sons, the new King of England, Richard Cœur de Lion. Do you know him? He was very, very famous in
Richard the
England.
Lionheart. Yes.
Yes, Richard the Lionheart. So we can't say that she has a big rule in the savoir-vivre. Of course, no. But we can say that thanks to her, French woman has something to be free, as something rebel, as a very huge personality. They live their own life, and they don't ask to someone what they have to do. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
They are free, and French women, when you compare to other countries, are free and they do what they want. And maybe that's why foreign people ask me, is it true that every woman in France has a lover? You know, and maybe because we have this reputation. And of course, yes, of course, we are very romantic. And of course, I said yes, because it's true, women want that lives how they want.
Yes.
We are like we can call rebel and free, definitely.
Yes. I love that.
But you have to know also, for the little story, that Aliénor d'Aquitaine was the richest woman in France and in Europe, maybe. So that's why also she can do what she wants.
That's true. And we've been talking quite a bit about the differences between what used to be done and what's done today, and the fact that we are in 2022 and we do need to be living in our time. So I'm curious, when you observe French people, French, children or adolescents, the younger generations of France, are you noticing that there are big differences in the savoir-vivre that you have and the savoir-vivre of the younger French generation?
Yes, I think it's very different and it's much more quick now because we are living in 2022 and 2022 is very quick. Speed. We are speed, definitely. So I think the difference is also we don't want to be rude to also. You know, you have to know, for example, that I have an application on TikTok as Countess Marie, and I did it last year. And TikTok is for young generation. And when I start last year in March, I think like something like that, when I start to explain some rules for this young generation, really and definitely in my mind, I was sure that it was a flop. But opposite to that, young generation follow me and are very keen and are very they want to that I go on. So every Monday I explain a rule, and I was the first to be surprised, really surprised. The young generation wants to know and to learn the rules. So okay, They are much more speed, much more. They don't want to spend time for a lot of things, but I'm so surprised to see that they want to learn the rules and to know the rules, and not only in France, because I have followers from Canada, from a lot of country, and yes, things have changed, of course, but the young generation is really what we call friand. They love to learn a lot of rules because they understood that if they want to raise in their work, in their business, they have to know how to be, between brackets, the savoir vivre, but savoir vivre in 2022, just and to know, and not to shock a lot of people. So they want to know, and they are keen of that.
I love that. I love that approach. I love that mindset. I love that you're bringing savoir vivre into the 21st century. And I also love that word you used, friand. Friand, which is a word that's linked to the French word friandise, which is like something tasty, something that people want to eat. So it's kind of like they're hungry for it. They're hungry for this knowledge. And I think that's really cool that you're delivering it.
Yes, they're hungry. And I'm the first surprise, because as you said, the young are not exactly the same as we were when we were young. And definitely they have taste for that.
Absolutely. And that actually leads me to the last question that I have for you, which is, what is your favorite word in French?
What is my favorite word? Um, Generosity. Generosity.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes, generosity.
That's a very good one.
I think it's the best. If you don't have the manners, but you have generosity, I think you are a winner.
Amazing.
Yes, of course. Generosity is the best, Offer what you have.
Well, thank you, Marie, for being so generous with your time and with your insights. We've loved having you on the podcast here, and I hope to speak with you again very soon.
Sorry for my English, because time to time is very difficult, and maybe when I'm in Paris it's better for me because I'm in, and here on my little island, it's very difficult because we have a lot of friends, French, of course, and I'm not totally in the state of mind to speak in English, So time to time is very difficult.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you very, very much. This has been Navigating the French. You can find more from me, Emily Monaco, at Emily_in_France on Twitter and Instagram. This podcast is produced by Paris Underground Radio. To listen to other episodes of this podcast or to discover more podcasts like it, please visit parisundergroundradio.com. Thanks for listening, and à bientôt.
This episode of Navigating the French was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio.